The next article I wanted to talk about is titled, Pastor, My 175,000 Hours of Bible Study Tell Me We're 100% in the Last Days. This is written by Beth Stoneburner on the Friendly Atheist website. This article is actually about a guy named Perry Stone. I covered him a while back about climate change. He was talking about climate change. We're going to watch that clip in a second. It's from early August 2021, but I just want to make note of something real quick. With this guy, Perry Stone, his YouTube channel has, wait for it, 600,000 subscribers. That is a whole heck of a heap of subscribers. 651,000 to be exact. That's concerning. We should be taking this guy seriously because he has a big fucking audience who listens to him. He's not a nobody. So the things that he says affect real people in real life. Let's give this clip a listen. Again, it's from early August, and he's explaining why climate change is irrelevant. After we listen to this one, we'll take a look at his newest one, explaining why we're actually in the last days, and he's 100% sure of it. So check this first clip out.
In Revelation chapter 20, when Christ comes back to earth and sets up his kingdom, he's going to change everything. And there's going to be 1,000 years of peace. And so the sons of God, and these are the children of God, these are believers who return with Christ to set up the kingdom for 1,000 years. We're going to see a complete change in the earth, and that what we call the travail of creation or the travail of the earth will cease when the Messiah returns. So those who criticize believers now for not being, environmentally concerned or whatever, we know how the book ends. We know where this is going. We know how in the end when Messiah comes back. Look, folks, can I say something to you?
My God, this guy doesn't, when he takes a breath, it's mid-sentence. He doesn't take a breath at the periods or the commas. It's like right after a word, or even in the middle of a word, he takes a breath and then just keeps on going. I'm trying to find a break in here. So basically what he's saying is God gave us the planet and all of the animals and everything to have dominion over it, right? You guys remember that verse in the Bible, don't you? Where we're supposed to take care of the planet and the animals and all that stuff. He's saying, stop giving a shit. Who cares? Why should we give a shit anymore? Jesus is coming back. We know how this ends. He's just going to snap his finger and then litter will be gone. We don't have to care. Pollution will just be gone. Fascinating. So it seems like he's finally accepting climate change, but he doesn't care.
It comes back. Look, folks, can I say something to you and say it in love? It's wonderful to do all that we can to help the planet, but at the same time, if you know what the prophecy says, you know what's coming, and you know that real peace, real joy, and everything that men want will only happen with the return of the Messiah.
If I remember correctly, God specifically left the planet and all of the animals on it in our care, didn't he? Didn't he tell us to take care of these things and treat them well and be fruitful and have children and be merry and all that shit? Oh, that verse is inconvenient, so just ignore it, If it's inconvenient to what you already believe, if it doesn't really click in with all the other shit, just throw it out. Who cares? Pretend it doesn't exist. Just one more contradiction marked on the board. So that was Pastor Perry Stone. Last time I covered him, I think it was around early August, and that was the video that we talked about at the time. I just wanted to give you a little bit of a lead up to who he is before getting into this article, and then we're going to watch the next clip from him. So let's give this article a read by Beth Stoneburner, see what she had to say. After hours, too many hours really, of intense study, right-wing Pastor Perry Stone is convinced we have officially entered the prophesied last days described in the Bible. It would be a little more convincing if countless preachers hadn't said the exact same thing many times before. This is a quote from Right Wing Watch on Twitter. Right-wing Pastor Perry Stone claims that he spent 175,000 hours studying the Bible, which equals 8 hours a day for every single day of his life, and declares that he's 100% certain that we literally have entered the last of the last days. So let's give this clip a watch and see what he had to say for himself. This came out early October 2021.
I am absolutely convinced. I'm 62 years of age. I've been preaching for 46 years. And I'm not saying this in a boasting way, but we probably have well over between 172 to about 175,000 hours literally in study. That's reading, studying, word studies, research, reading books. And that's not an exaggeration, because since I was 16 years of age, I would go 4 hours, then 8 hours, and sometimes 10 to 12 hours a day. My staff knows I'm telling you the fact. That's
okay. Even with that as the fact, which, you know, I'm having a little trouble accepting it, but okay, you know, for the sake, let's just humor the guy. Let's say he's accurate in this fact. That's still not 175,000 hours, not even close to it. He said he's been in the ministry for 40 years, right? Let's be generous. Say 10 hours a day, 5 days a week, because, you know, you got to have the weekends off, of course. 10 hours a day, 5 days a week, 52 weeks a year, 40 years. That's 100,000 hours. 104,000 to be exact. Not 175,000. That's 60% of what he actually claimed. I know this is kind of a silly point to harp on. I'm just saying you got to be accurate when you say shit like this. Come on. Or nobody's going to believe you. Even saying it's 10 hours a day is like obscenely high.
in fact. That's what I do. And in the process of the study and the research, I am 100%, not 99.5%, that we have literally entered the last of the last days, the time of the end.
Doesn't that sound familiar? Have we heard that from anybody else? I seem to remember our old buddy Stephen Lett saying something similar to that, Jehovah's Witness governing body member.
So the events unfolding around us are making clearer than ever that we're living in the final part of the last days, undoubtedly the final part of the final part of the last days, shortly before the last day of the last days.
People have been claiming that we've been in the last days since the dawn of fucking time. But I do wonder, like, you know, I wasn't alive and aware and keeping track of this shit 50 years ago. Or even 30 years ago, or 20 years ago. I wasn't even paying attention. I wonder if it has gotten more urgent in the past 20 years. I wonder if people are getting, like, more serious about it now than they were 20 years ago. I mean, we don't really have any way of knowing, I guess, because media is completely different now than it was 50 years ago. You know, the internet exists now, and it just didn't exist in its current form 50 years ago. Not like it is now. I really wish we knew, we had some solid way of knowing if they're getting more and more urgent, or if this is just the same bluster we've always heard. But it honestly, it's endlessly entertaining to hear pastors make claims like this, that we're in the last days. I love it. I love listening to these guys stick their foot in their mouth over and over again. Anyway, let's read this article by Beth Stoneburner. This is a quote from the video we just watched. We probably have well over between 172 to about 175,000 hours, literally, in study. Since I was 16 years of age, I'd go 4 hours, then 8 hours, and sometimes 10 to 12 hours a day. My staff knows I'm telling you the fact. That's what I do. And in the process of the study and the research, I'm 100%, not 99.5%, that we have literally entered the last of the last days, the time of the end. This is Beth Stoneburner speaking. Of course, it doesn't matter how long you study if you don't know how to do it right. And claiming 100% certainty about the future based on a close reading of a text that continues to spur debate even in Christian circles is a sure sign that Stone never studied the text properly. Anyone who stayed half awake in seminary could refute this too, regardless of how long they studied, simply because, 1, the Bible says that technically the last days began with the death of Christ, and 2, no one, no matter their credentials, is supposed to know the day or the hour of Christ's return. Maybe Stone skipped those verses during his study sessions. Good point. Jehovah's Witnesses had this addiction to telling the future, to predicting the end. They did it like 16 fucking times throughout history. They did it in like 1874, 1878, 1913, 1914, 1922, 1925, 1975, a billion that I've already missed. They kept doing it, and they kept getting it wrong over and over again. And finally, Jehovah's Witnesses learned from their mistakes and pretty much swore to never make a prediction like that again, never set a date like that. Now, they'll get super urgent about things. They'll say, we're in the last days, we're here. They'll stop saying the last days are near, and they'll start saying the last days are here. That's the kind of shit that they do. And in fact, just, 10 months ago, Stephen Lett said we're in the last days of the last days, or something like that.
So the events unfolding around us are making clearer than ever that we're living in the final part of the last days, undoubtedly the final part of the final part of the last days, shortly before the last day of the last days.
So it doesn't really surprise me that these people are continuing to do this. I'm just surprised they didn't learn from their predecessors, honestly. And also, the fact that they didn't read the verse from the Bible that says nobody's supposed to know the day or the hour of Christ's return. What happened to that? Did they just forget that verse existed? When it's not convenient to what they want, they ignore it. That's the problem. When it's inconvenient, they pretend it's not even there. Let's keep reading. This is Beth Stoneburner again. It's really incredible when people start bemoaning the last days the moment we're dealing with plagues, like a collapsed economy, corrupt leadership, etc. We're always in the last days because it's impossible to fact check. It's not hard for the same people who claim God created the universe in 6 days, because the Bible doesn't specify the length of the days, to stretch the duration of the last days. It means none of us will ever be around to fact check this down the road. The irony is that Christians like Stone could make the case that climate change is an existential threat that better fits the idea of the last days, but they won't make that argument because it would involve accepting the reality of our environmental crisis. That's very true, although some religious pastors, some religious wingnuts have actually accepted it and said that it's the result of God. He's doing this. This is the end of days. This is his plan to destroy the earth through climate change. There is no end to this madness, and I would kill to have a bead on whether or not this is getting more intense over time. I would love to know if it's exactly the same now as it was 50 years ago. I guess that's something that is probably objectively knowable, but it would require an awful lot of research, and I don't know if the data is even there. I don't know if, like, 50 years ago, people were even recording that kind of thing, you know? Like, were televangelists on TV back in the 70s saying this stuff? Possibly. Maybe they were. But we didn't have TVs, say, in 1910 or 1900. We have no way of knowing if it's gotten more intense over the past 100 years. Maybe we can objectively know this over the past 50. It'd be hard to research and find out. But over the past 100 years, I don't know. Past 200-300, probably not something that we could ever know. But damn, it would be interesting to know for sure. Tim Gwaine. Yeah, in the 70s, end times and the rapture were huge. Even a lousy movie series of the rapture and tribulation. I remember in 1988, there was a pamphlet out there that was titled 88 Reasons the Rapture Will Happen in 1988. Fascinating. My God. I didn't realize that. You know, I should definitely write some of this shit down and read some of these pamphlets and some of these, like, materials. Like, Jehovah's Witnesses did a prediction in 1975, too, and it fell flat on its face, of course. See if I can find some of this shit and read it on stream. I think that'd be super interesting.